everybody, it's meteorologist Joe Cioffi here on this Thursday, May 17th, 2018, coming up on a quarter after 6. We are still in this very wet pattern here in the eastern part of the United States, and I brought up the U.S. satellite view here, which is over to my left, and below you can see the radar overlaid with the Storm Prediction Center and their severe weather risk, which today is confined mostly to the plains from south to north, a large area running from West Texas on northward. We're going to get to that in a second. I want to focus attention on this, what's going on here in the east, where we have this very strong trough that is running from the central Gulf states, and that trough extends down into the Gulf of Mexico. I'm going to try to bring up the satellite picture here on one of the paint boxes so that we can at least take a look at what this all means going forward. We've had quite a bit of rain over the last couple of days, but that has at least relaxed for the most part, for the time being at least, that is the case. And we're going to see the rain settle down into the mid-Atlantic states and then eventually come back up northward. Okay, seems like whenever I need the internet to work right, it doesn't want to do its thing. So we'll have to come back to that a little bit later on. But in the meantime, if you look at the structure of the cloud cover, and what is wonderful about these GOES, the new GOES, is that you can actually see the layers of the clouds themselves, and you see the structure here, that turning, the curl in the cloud cover. That is the base of the upper trough, and ahead of it, the winds are from the south, and you've got all this moisture here that's in the northwestern Caribbean, all across the state of Florida, and all through the eastern part of the United States. So this has really been the case now for a while, and it's going to remain the case into the weekend. So we still have some more wet weather work to do. I guess that's probably the best way to put it. And then maybe the pattern's going to take a little bit of a shift as we move into next week. That would be a good thing, at least break down this tropical flow for a little while. It's not going to be, I don't know how long it's going to last, but we should at least see this thing break down for a little bit. It's you get stuck in this sometimes in the springtime, and it becomes really problematic with trying to get at least a few days of sunshine, and it just doesn't want to happen. But you know, it is what it is, and it also is very typical of this time of year. This is not it's just not that unusual. The thing is, it doesn't happen the same way year after year, so everybody kind of gets, you know, some people get all worked up, and of course the conspiracy theory of the day will show its ugly head, but this is just typical spring. I'm going to I was able to successfully bring up the satellite, and actually I've got a wider picture here that I'm going to show you. So let me just bring up the paint box and see where this is going, and that's not it. So hang on one second. We'll see if we can get the paint box up there. And we do have the paint box up. So there it is, and it's going to be front and center here in just a second. And you can see what I'm saying here. When you look at the layers of the cloud cover, they show up really, really well. Now I've focused it a little bit further to the south, but you can pick out the tropical connection here that runs from the northwestern Caribbean right up through the state of Florida. Make that a little bit wider, but you know, right up through the state of Florida, and then going further north from there, you're bringing that moisture up the eastern seaboard, and the upper trough that is evident. If you look really close, you could see the trail of just probably a little bit of some puffy cumulus that are running sort of northwest to southeast. That is the western side of that trough, and the upper level winds, you know, coming from north to south and then turning and then going south to north up the eastern seaboard. And this is what we're going to be fighting. We have to get rid of this. A little bit of a weak upper low here. We have to get rid of this in order to finally break down the pattern and make it a bit more acceptable. By the way, if you notice, go back over through Texas, western Texas, and on up into the Oklahoma Panhandle and into western Kansas, right in here. These are thunderstorms that are developing, and it's part of that area of severe weather we're talking about. And if you, the picture, the detail is so good, you can just about pick out the higher cloud tops. And then you have that second area of severe weather that is developing up in the central and northern plains. And again, you're seeing those thunderstorms fire up as well. Very active pattern here in the east. There's going to be one more surge of rain that is going to make its way northward in time, and that is going to, I think, probably cause some flooding issues before this is all said and done. As far as those issues are concerned, here's the latest watches and warnings map from the National Weather Service, and you can see the large area of flood watches that are up for all of Virginia, just about all of Virginia, a small portion of western North Carolina, eastern West Virginia, to Maryland, Delaware, southern Pennsylvania, and New Jersey, mainly along and south of Route 78. If you're watching from my area, if you're watching from New Jersey, you're certainly familiar with Route 78. And in Pennsylvania, you're also familiar with that. It does not extend to New York City. It does not extend to the Hudson Valley or Connecticut or Long Island or for much of southern New England. We have two severe thunderstorm watches up this evening. One that is running from western Texas through north Texas into southern Kansas, and then the second one that is up back through the western, a good chunk of South Dakota, northeastern Wyoming, southeastern Montana. Some red flag warnings that are up because of dry conditions in New Mexico and Arizona. The rest of the nation is kind of catching a little bit of a break here. So that's a good thing. Now, I want to talk about next week, because we do have, as I said, I think we have some hints that there's going to be at least a bit of a pattern shift and what that means. And I'm also going to address the possibility now of something coming out of the tropics. Now, I know over the last few days, more than the last few days, you know, we've been addressing the fact that the GFS, which for the last almost 2 weeks has been trying to show a tropical system in the day 11 to 16 time frame, and that has, you know, we discounted that completely because it was the only model that was doing it, and it never seemed to come inside the 10-day time frame. Well, we're beginning to see that, and it's kind of making sense to me now that a scenario exists where this is possible. And the European model and the Canadian model and the ICON model, they all seem to be picking up on this, and I'll explain that what I mean in a second. But first off, there's the big high in the northeast that creates this onshore flow, the rain that comes up from the mid-Atlantic states back into the northeast Friday night and Saturday. And then after that, it gets a little bit better on Sunday, a bit of a break, before the next system from the west now comes in. So this tropical connection may get cut off for a little bit, and this is going to bring a sort of a warm front, cold front combination through here as we move into Tuesday and Wednesday of next week. And then after that, you can start to see here late next week, you start to look down near Cuba, and there's a low, a tropical system that the model's picking up on. And you can also see, by the way, that a weather front that pushes southward with a nice cool high that comes, for this time of year anyway, that comes down into the Great Lakes. So what's going on? Well, when we look at the upper air, there is, and it's going to be interesting to see whether this happens or not, but I'll just back up for you. Think back to the last few days, the big ridge off the East Coast, southerly flow from the Northwest Caribbean right up the East Coast into the mid-Atlantic states and southern areas of the Northeast. The northern jet in Canada that would bring down these dry air masses, that's pinned up well to the north. Well, we've got a pretty strong trough that the models seem to be indicating, and all the models have this in one form or another, that swings down into eastern Canada. That squashes that ridge off the East Coast. You see how it disappears, and suddenly you've got west and northwest winds. The westerlies drop all the way down into Georgia, and this brings cooler air. At the very least, it certainly starts making, weather systems, it starts them moving along from west to east, and it cuts off the flow from the south, at least for the latter part of next week. The other thing that's going on, and I'm going to have to change regions on this to show you, is we'll go to this North Atlantic view, and if you look at the upper air, in fact, I think what I'm going to do is let me bring this up. Let me bring this up for you on the paint box again, so that I could at least will draw on it, and I'll illustrate. I'll be able to illustrate this a bit better. But here we go. So let me get the region that I want and get the map that I want. You know, one of the issues, folks, is that sometimes with me, anyway, this stuff kind of pops into my head while I'm doing it. So I sort of ad-lib it. And almost there. Okay, now back to you guys on the board. Let me bring up the paint box. We'll get rid of this for the time being. And here we go. So here you have, this is the GFS for late next week. So we're basically a week away, and I want to show you what's happening. You have this deep, actually for this time of year, that's a pretty strong vortex that the model forms in New Brunswick. So now you've got this northerly flow that comes down out of Canada. You see it here, and there it is. And that is going to bring down cooler air. We no longer have the southerly flow along the East Coast. Obviously, you've got northwest winds in the upper atmosphere going all the way down into South Carolina and then off the East Coast. The ridge, the ridge off the Atlantic seaboard has weakened, but one of the things that still exists is there is a weakness here. There is a trough that extends down from the central Gulf, the southern part of the central Gulf states down into the Northwest Caribbean. So I think there's a chance that something may try to come out of the Northwest Caribbean. If anything is going to happen this time of year, that would be the one spot where you might see some development. And bear in mind that it goes against climatology in a big way because of the fact that there have been there've only been 24 tropical storms in the month of May, and only 4 of them become hurricanes if they've gotten that far. So you're really, the odds are stacked against you in a month where we're talking about the probability of something happening that occurs maybe once every 10 years or so. So you're really pushing the envelope. I just think that there's enough there now with all the models seeming to show this idea that I think it's worth a mention for later next week. We'll see whether it happens or not. Now, as we look at the long range and that trough, and this, I went back one run. The new 18Z model run seems to be deeper with this system in the east than the prior run. A much stronger northwest flow being indicated, and eventually that lifts out, and after that we do have a ridge that builds again in the east and a trough again that shows up in the central Gulf states and Tennessee Valley. So this may open up the moisture spigots again as we move toward the last days of May and into the beginning of June. So that's something we're going to have to watch and see whether that happens or not. The structure here is a bit different in terms of where the model puts the upper high. It's a little further north and west, so that might maybe pin the moisture back further southwest of us, for my area anyway. But it does perhaps create a rainy look for the southeastern part of the U.S. and maybe up into some of the mid-Atlantic states in the longer term. So, you know, a pretty interesting pattern that we have. It's kind of typical with respect to mid to late May. There's nothing new here. You know, I noticed that over the last few days, a few people commenting about, you know, they're spraying the clouds. So look, if you really want to believe that, spraying the sky, if you really want to believe that, and some, you know, you could probably rest assured that you'll be talking about the fact that they're spraying down in the Caribbean, in the Northwest Caribbean, and in the Gulf of Mexico if something develops there next week. You know, that's your thing. It's not mine. I really don't have the time to get into all that nonsense as far as I'm concerned. So here's the radar at the moment. And we've got the rain area, which has been trying to move northward, but that high to the north is kind of standing in the way. I'm trying to refresh this to get a fresh new radar shot for you, so it's a little later in time. But the drier area, at least for now, is winning out. That doesn't really help areas in southern New Jersey, Delaware, Maryland, Virginia, into parts of North Carolina. That we're going to see some heavy rains, and some of the thunderstorms that are developing here are producing some substantial rainfall amounts. So there still certainly could be another several inches of rain in areas that have already gotten several inches of rain, which is the reason why we've got the flood watches up. Not too much happening in the tropical Pacific. We can show you the map, the satellite view here. Hurricane season has begun in the tropical Pacific, and we've just got some weak waves running along, but doesn't seem to be anything that the Hurricane Center is watching. I like, even though the vast majority of storms in the Pacific really don't do anything to anyone, I do like to watch it, just because sometimes you do have impact on, well, how the Pacific behaves and the Atlantic behaves. They sometimes work opposite of each other, and oftentimes you can get a clue to the activity on the Atlantic side by watching the activity on the Pacific side. There's the to my left there, the visible satellite late this afternoon and evening. You can see the drier air to the north kind of pushing its way southward. Actually was enough to send temperatures up into the upper 60s and low 70s my way, which was a nice change from the gloomy 50s and low 60s of the last couple of days. And here's the severe weather threat as we take a look. And there you go. So you've got, you know, those two severe thunderstorm watches up. You can see where the risk is. Small area of marginal risk also on the Florida Panhandle. The thunderstorms that are being produced over the state of Florida, mostly producing heavy rains, and that tropical connection. Again, the radar shows how the connection there that runs from the mid-Atlantic states all the way down through Florida and beyond. And you can see the echoes turning. So there's a little bit of an upper low here that's sitting back over probably in northern Alabama, northern Georgia. That trough, the trough from that low extending down into the Gulf of Mexico and creating that southerly flow. Just came to my head that there is a royal wedding this weekend. So, you know, maybe we can just take a look really fast at, I haven't been really doing too much with the weather in Europe lately, but you know, you guys know I like to do that. So we'll take a look and see what's happening. And I will not be going because I am busy with my own royalty with my grandson. I'm going to be busy. Big dome of high pressure sitting over England, keeping things pretty dry here for the moment. And it looks like Saturday should be pretty good. At least right into midnight Sunday. Showers look like they're going to hold off. Much of Europe looks dry. 2 meter temperatures. Let's take a look at what the models are saying as far as the temperatures are concerned. We've got, trying to look at this really close. So it looks like temperatures Saturday at noon are going to be in the 60s across England and Ireland. So it'll be in the 60s, and it doesn't look half bad. Sometimes I can get a simulated IR. So let's put what the satellite's supposed to look like. And you do have some high, we do have, this is on Friday. I mean, it doesn't really look like that bad at all. There might be some breaks of sun through the clouds on Saturday in Europe. So the royal wedding may get some royal breaks of sunshine, which is nice. It looks like it's going to be rain-free in England. So looking good. Anyway, coming on board with you guys here for just a second. So let's take a look at what everybody's chatting about. Hope everybody's having a great evening. Bill Huber. I think most of Saturday, William, is going to be a washout. There's a chance this rain could get out of here later in the afternoon if it comes in fast enough Friday night. I think the daytime for me tomorrow, northern New Jersey, Long Island, southeastern New York, Connecticut, it will be dry during the day tomorrow and into the very first part of tomorrow night. By the way, there have been 4 tornadoes now confirmed for the Hudson Valley from the severe weather outbreak from a couple of days ago, and still looking at some of the stuff that's coming out of Connecticut, which is just absolutely amazing. Hi to Delvin, hi to Chris Alley, Dio Nankumar, good to see you here, and AMD Ryzen fan. Snow in northern Wisconsin unusual. Is May 14th snow on? Did you guys have? I wasn't paying attention. What was going on up there? Because I really wasn't paying attention. I would say, yeah, it's probably pretty unusual even for northern Wisconsin to get snow in the middle of May. YouTuber, I wonder why the HRRR outperforms the NAM when it comes to these strong storms spawning. The NAM holds true over the rest of the models when it comes to nor'easters. Well, yeah, I wouldn't. The thing is, perhaps the grid on the HRRR is a little bit more, maybe it's a bit better than what the NAM is. The NAM 12 did not really do a very good job with these thunderstorms. That I was half paying attention to the 3-kilometer NAM, but the HRRR for the last 2 severe weather events, there's some indication that they might both be considered the 2 severe weather events of this week, back-to-back derecho events in the Northeast and the northern Mid-Atlantic states, that the HRRR did a very, very good job with both those, exceptionally well. So perhaps it's finally gotten its footing back and will be useful as a tool going forward. I say that cautiously because, we'll have to see, but it's 2 for 2, and it did it in 2 big events. And of course, the NAM was so good during the winter. It was so good for so long. It's bound to have some issues at some point. Perhaps the trend now will be away from the NAM and toward the HRRR. That's something we're going to be looking at in the coming weather events. Ryan Ford, it is way too early for tropical entities to even discuss any kind of a tropical system at all. I brought it up today because the models have been showing it, and there's been some confusion, and now that all of them are showing it, and we certainly have the upper air that might suggest that something could try. But remember, we've got climatology working against us here. At the late May, tropical systems are very few and very far between. So we're going to have to just wait and see till we get into next week to see exactly what we're dealing with. We could just be dealing with, a weak low-level circulation that comes out of there and not much more. So it's to even expect it to, you've got 160 some odd years of history where nothing of consequence has really happened up the eastern seaboard as far as May tropical storms are concerned. It's a very hard thing to want to go argue against. 4 tornadoes, the largest outbreak, Mickey D33S Petrovich, I believe April 25th, 28th, 2013 had over 300 tornadoes. Okay, that would encompass a large geographic area. This severe weather outbreak from my area is probably one of the largest ones that I could remember. This may be one of the largest severe weather outbreaks in terms of tornado production that I think I've seen in my almost 40 years of doing this. My memory is a little bit thin. I would probably have to verify that is indeed the case. It seems to be the case, but I could very well be wrong. Okay, folks, going to call it a day at this point. We had a late start tonight because of some stuff going on where I am, but we still were able to get this on the air. Let's see, breaking live stream, CNN, Fox News, ABC, CBS, NBC. Great, great ID you've got there. We're going to get on East Coast tornadoes on the East Coast from now on. Thank you, Joe. Well, you know what? If this 5-year cycle I was talking with one of my weather service friends about in thunderstorms is true, then we're going to be on an up cycle as far as thunderstorm activity is concerned. So maybe the severe weather events of the last 2 days are a bit of a sign of that. Okay, 9:15 tonight, the Joe Cioffi Weather Show, or the Joe and Joe Weather Show, on my Facebook page, meteorologist Joe Cioffi, or on Joe Rayo's Facebook page, which is Joe Rayo Weather. And otherwise, we'll be back here on YouTube. If you're not on Facebook, I will upload the show to my video library, and it should be up there. If I get lucky and we end the show soon enough, I can have that Joe and Joe show up by 10 o'clock tonight. Otherwise, it will probably be after midnight. Thank you for those of you who over time have hit Super Chat. I really appreciate it. And you can support my channel by using the Amazon link that's on the descriptor to the live stream or to the video. We're a participant in the Amazon Services Associates program, which is a program designed for my channel to be able to earn fees from Amazon if you link to Amazon from the link that I provide. Thank you very much for those of you who do. We will see you on Friday at 6 p.m. Eastern Time for the next YouTube show, and tonight on Facebook at 9:15.